Grab a cup, settle in, and turn it up. It's time for a couple of drips. Coffee, conversation, and occasional quips. Here's your host, Chris Granger.
Hello, and welcome to the latest installment of A Couple of Drips. Thank you very much for joining us. It's lovely to have you here. I'm going to introduce my guest for today. He's a man with many interests and a very interesting and varied background, none of which I'm going to spoil in this introduction. I will just welcome him to the studio. Please give a very warm welcome to Mr. Chris Baxter. Hello, Chris.
Well, hello. Good afternoon.
How are you? Oh, what a lovely, smooth, silky radio voice you have there.
Oh, why, thank you. It's completely put on just for this.
Excellent.
Actually.
Great. Well, if you can keep that up for an hour, she said.
Yeah.
that would be fantastic. So, Chris, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you from? Where are you currently now based?
Well, originally I'm from Piezo, but I haven't lived there since I was 19. I don't really recommend anyone else live there for too long either.
Apologies to all our northern listeners.
I love my hometown, but it's been voted one of the worst places to live in the UK like 5 years in a row now. I ran away to join the army when I was 19 after giving the finger to my university place. And I've not really stayed in one place for very long until I ended up in Stoke, which is obviously much better than Peterborough.
Beautiful. Love it.
And I ran away from Stoke to North Mid Wales, I should say.
Oh, nice. Whereabouts?
In the Tanat Valley, Llanfachlin.
Bit of phlegm there. Yeah.
It took me a year to learn how to say that.
Yeah, I love Wales actually, but I have a short Wales story to tell you, which I should have really told you off air, but it's so good I thought I'd save it because I spent the week there last week in my cousin's holiday home.
Yeah, I saw you.
Very pleasant, very nice. Apart from the journey back on Sunday, it was my sister's birthday on Sunday. And so we didn't leave until 6 in the evening. And of course, we're in the middle of Storm Eunice, is it at the moment? And every road we went would either the riverbanks had burst or it was flooded or something. So 3.5 hours into the journey home that should have been an hour and 58 minutes according to Google, we were actually further away from home than we were when we started, and we ended up going all the way out and all the way round and right up to virtually Whitchurch and then joining back on the A5. 9.5 hours, 3:30 in the morning we got home from leaving at 6 o'clock at night.
Was that on the Sunday just gone?
That's the Sunday just gone.
I was travelling back from Kidderminster that day, and it took us, well, there was 2 felled trees and 3 road closures, and we ended up using farm tracks to get back. Yeah,
we had a couple of riverbanks burst, a couple of places where we were in a 4x4, but we still didn't risk it, kind of thing. It was absolutely insane. So that was the most surreal car journey ever. Just like at one point, even the A5 was flooded, and we had to get off the A5 for a while. Yeah. And then you're hitting a B road again, and you're going, oh no, if this is we really are stuck. If this is flooded, we're going to just be sleeping in the car, kind of thing. But I tell you what, there was a point where we were running out of petrol, and I've never been so glad to see a service station with a Starbucks in my life. The 2 women who were working in there overnight didn't know what hit them. These people were like, like you've been lost in the desert or you've been in a plane crash and you've not seen people for 3 months, and then you see the first person. It was that kind of reception they got,
grabbing at the windows like zombies.
Absolutely, yeah, very much so. Yeah. Boy, did we buy a lot of coffee. But that was amazing. Just a little aside story there was.
Yeah. What was the name of the place you were staying again?
We were staying in Abu Dhabi.
Abu Dhabi, yeah.
Abu Dhabi.
Love it there.
Which they spell Aberdif. It's a funny spelling there locally. But shout out to the little bistro that we went to on the seafront, which I've totally forgotten the name of now, of course. But if I remember it later in the show, I'll drop it in. But we had some nice food and some nice breakfast there, but I can't remember what it was called.
Abu Dhabi is lovely, but it's lovely because it's never too crowded. So if you're listening, go to Barmouth. It's much nicer. Don't go to Abu Dhabi.
Oh, okay.
That's for us.
All right.
Go to Barmouth.
Well, unfortunately, my cousin doesn't have a house in Barmouth, but Well, you know what they say, though. The girls from Abu Dhabi don't, but the girls from Abu Dhabi do. Oh, no. Totally. Anyway, so that was my weekend, which was interesting. How was your weekend? What did you do last weekend?
I went to see my parents in Peterborough. Took my brother because obviously COVID has been a pain in everyone's arse for over 2 years now. So it's been both my parents.
Minor inconvenience, I would describe it as.
Yeah. It's well, I got stuck in Iraq for 4 months, but we'll come to that.
Wow.
So both my parents.
What were you doing in a medieval torture? Oh, Iraq. Sorry,
Iraq, not on Iraq.
Iraq.
No,
Okay,
I
sorry,
saved
do
that for
apologise,
Tuesdays at the club. What you said about being a vinyl fan before? So yeah, a couple of prominent birthdays. My brother's 50th, my parents' 70th, both.
Wow. Nice.
And it's been a long time since all of us were in one place at the same time. So we all planned to get together. My niece got COVID. My sister's garden blew away.
As many of them did, I think.
Yeah. She's got a nice full woodshed now, though,
well.
full of the arbor and the picnic bench and some of the rose bushes.
Yeah.
But hey,
Well,
maybe that
enough.
was COVID's last swing as it's going down.
Let's hope things can only get better, as they say.
Yeah, we swapped COVID for World War III. It's a fair swap.
Yeah, when we're recording, the minor skirmish in the Ukraine is currently kicking off. More of that later, I feel. But first of all, let's have some coffee.
All together now. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Coffee time, it's coffee time. It doesn't matter if it's your place or mine. Coffee we call the wine of America. Brother of mine is better than tea.
Coffee time.
Cyber coffee from the sound.
Cyber coffee, yeah. I don't know why I went for singing robots, but bored during lockdown, I think. Like, what can you do in a studio? Oh, I know. Let's make myself sound like Metal Mickey. So, what are we drinking, Chris?
Coffee.
We are indeed coffee. And next week...
I literally just looked at this as well. No, I didn't look at anything.
He is reading from a card, which is fine, because if I had to pronounce the names of coffees without looking at a card, I wouldn't bother either.
There's a lot of detail. It's very nice. This is a roast from Packed Coffee called El Durazno. And this little card is fantastic. It gives you the tasting breakdown, the notes, the nose even. There's more on this coffee card than there is on most bottles of wine. So I'm very impressed.
That's true.
And it tastes fantastic.
And it's supposedly got hints of what do they say it tastes of?
Black tea and mandarin.
I can definitely get both of those from it, actually.
It's nice because it's different parts of your tongue pick up different flavours.
Yeah.
So you get the mandarin on the tip of your tongue.
It's quite a light mouthfeel. It's quite it's not a heavy coffee, I would say, which is probably for the best, because we made 800 mils of it and we've just caned it, haven't we?
Yeah. I mean, for someone who normally drinks very strong coffees, like black tar kind of coffees.
You introduced me to Skull Crusher coffee.
Yeah.
Which I did actually buy a bag after you recommended that.
Yeah, what do you think? Apart from once you've calmed down.
I mean, you can't. If you asked me to give you tasting notes for it, my response would be, "Who are you? Where am I?
What are you doing in my house?
What? Yes, it's a coffee that tastes very much like coffee, a Skull Crusher coffee. If you've never tried it, and if you're very sensitive to caffeine, I recommend giving it a go once.
But, who doesn't enjoy a good round of palpitations?
Yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't say it's high quality coffee beans, but I would say if you need a massive caffeine kick and you're really not into drinking Red Bull and things like that, it is something you have to try once. Don't drink it late at night.
No, not if you enjoy sleeping ever again.
But you mentioned the cards there. I like the little cards from Pact. It's a nice little touch.
Yeah. You can tell it's when people care about their products, they go the extra mile to describe it and its origins. And when someone's put a lot of effort into something, it shows because they're keen to tell you about that effort and share their knowledge.
Definitely. Talking about quality products, how about this for a segue? Talking about quality products. Tell us what your current job is, Chris.
I am now a professional full-time luthier.
For someone who doesn't know what a luthier is or thinks it might be the nemesis of Superman, would you like to tell us a little bit more?
Yeah, it's not an obscure form of religion. It's I make stringed instruments.
Very nice.
So the term luthier covers all stringed instruments, but in modern day it tends to refer to guitars, and I'm building guitars, electric guitars and basses at the moment, and an acoustic on the bench.
I will obviously put a link to some of the pictures of the things that you've built in the description, but you've just finished a rather sexy bass, I understand.
Yeah, it was, and this is really the core of what I want to do, is tailor-made guitars to the individual. It was a man of modest build who wanted a bit more variation, so he wanted a 5-string bass, but he needed it to be short scale. Okay. You try finding one of those online.
Yeah, there aren't many of those online.
Yeah, and the construction comes with a couple of problems, like there's a bit less real estate on the body, the intonation, the fretwork has to be spot on. So it was a really nice challenge, and I even had him into the workshop a couple of times to fit the body. So the body is carved to fit him as he likes it. You know, how do you, Chris, when you play, are you normally stood up? Do you sit down?
Well, that's an interesting question, because when I started to learn to play, I was having classical guitar lessons, so I was very much sit down, the little footstool that raises you one leg up, sitting in the traditional classical position with the headstock kind of level with your face, but obviously that's not very rock and roll. So when I play bass, I generally standing up, but I have an incredibly heavy-duty padded strap. I use the Levi's straps made in the States. They're incredibly heavy-duty padded. I think they're about £70 for a strap kind of thing, but you get what you pay for kind of thing. You know, they are incredible straps. But I play it, because I learned classical, I play it very high up.
Yeah.
So it's not very rock and roll, you know, but you find that your bass guitars don't end up with strap buckle marks in the back of them, which is quite nice as well. So yeah, I tend to play it quite high up, which is why I need to lose some weight at the moment, because the bass it's like lying the bass on a table at the moment.
Well, if you wanted a bass from me, I would say, right, well, let's come up with a body shape that fits your style of play, so it doesn't end up swinging around and moving, so you're not constantly having to adjust it. There's the name escapes me now. There's a famous concert classical guitarist, and she's a huge crush of mine. I've forgotten her name. I'm really annoyed. I'll have to break out Google, because she's stunningly good looking and an incredible guitarist. But she plays sat down with quite a shot, like a 45-degree angle. Yeah. And I was watching her play, and I thought, wouldn't it be nice if the guitar had a shape or something, but so it would rest on her leg. And that was one of the things that started me thinking about tailor-made guitars, and why is there not more innovation with guitars? And I want to be an innovator with it, and there's a lot of different things with modern production guitars, which I feel I can improve upon for people.
I mean, it's interesting you talk about that kind of that form-fit guitar, you know, because the biggest leap when Leo Fender was inventing the Stratocaster and the precision bass, the biggest leap was when he decided to shave the back and actually contour the back so that it was actually comfortable to fit against the body. You know, that was kind of a massive leap there. But yeah, you're absolutely right. It would be nice with a classical guitar if you could have that kind of curve over the leg.
It's just one of many features that you can customize. You know, I want to make custom instruments that are individual items for that person. You know, something they never want to part with.
Yeah, absolutely. absolutely.
And when I talk about industry standards, like you mentioned, the body contour on a Fender is a good one. Another one would be like the C-shaped neck. People argue over which is the best kind of shaped neck, a C shape, a D shape, flat back. There's all these different kinds out there, and it all depends on what shape your hand is and how long your fingers are.
Yeah,
and
that's very true.
So if you want something in between, I hand carve all my necks.
Yeah.
So like, I had to give the guitar to its current owner, and he was all about the body, and I said, no, you need to run your hand up and down the neck, of like,
absolutely,
and tell me what you feel when you're playing it. Is it too thick? Is it too wide? Is there anything I can do to make it better? So it takes a bit more time, but
that's what you pay for. That's the service, isn't it? That's the service, the boutique, as it were, individual artisan. Use whichever posh term that you like, kind of thing, but that's what you're paying for a not an off-the-shelf guitar, which is built for an average body, an average person, and you might have a C neck, as you say, or a D neck, or even a V neck. That's a guitar V neck, not a jumper. But if you're having one custom made, obviously that's the difference you get. You can have it right from the start. It always amuses me. You see so many people buying off-the-shelf guitars, and then like the first thing they do is, I'm going to change the machine heads, or I'm going to change the bridge, or I'm going to change the neck, or I'm going to change the pickups. And it's like, why don't you just get one made with everything that you want on it to start with? If you don't like it off the shelf, why are you buying that in the first place?
Absolutely. And slightly more baffling to me is when people buy custom handmade Strats or Tellys or Flying V's, and they're just copies. They're just built by someone who isn't that brand. They'll be very well made, and they'll be coloured the way people want, and maybe got some different hardware in, but essentially it's a carbon copy. And you could have something unique instead. And I think if not someone's perfectly happy with having off the shelf stuff. But
if you're paying someone to build you something individual, why make it like something else? Why not just say, right, this is completely off the shelf, this is completely individual. Let's not make a jazz bass or a Stratocaster, or let's make it whatever we want it to be, kind of thing.
Yeah, and I would hope that it would lead to innovation as well, because I said before, I want to be an innovator, and I want to get away from production line stuff, because when you've got a standard construction process that's been repeated hundreds of thousands of times, and the Strat's the perfect example for this. You can outsource. You've got CNC machines churning out hundreds of bodies at once, hundreds of necks, and they're just kind of hand finished as assembles and shoved out the door. There's a lot of features on the guitar which suit the process. They've changed the features on the guitar to make them easier to mass produce. So who says that's the best way of doing it? Is it the fastest, most efficient? Probably. They've put millions of dollars into getting to that point. But if you've got something special, something different, don't be unimaginative. Don't hold back.
There's definitely something to be said about the difference between something that's carved by someone by hand and something that's done on a CNC milling machine. It's
CNC has its place. I've got a small, hobbyist CNC machine, which I use just for making my templates, so I can route cavities and that kind of thing. And I can also use it for a little bit of signage and side projects and things like that. But I can also use it to skim very large pieces of wood, so I get a nice flat surface. So there's a lot of machining applications which don't take away from the fact that something's handmade. I'm not carving the bodies using it. I'm not making the necks using it. Because I think hand carving the neck and the bodies are two of my favourite processes. Because it's like putting your signature in it. It's your
definitely.
It's your sweat. You're out of breath. Sawdust in my beard and everything, and the smell of the wood coming up, and the whole process is extremely
lovely,
satisfying to me.
How do you feel about the electronic side of it when you're doing that? Is that something that motivates you, or is it something, or as you sew into the wood and that, do you feel that the electronics is kind of something you have to do, but it's not the fun bit, sort of thing?
It's you're edging dangerously close to a conversation about tone with there, my friend. The electric side is also something that I think could benefit from a lot of modernisation, because much like Martin changed the way acoustic guitars were being built, and they standardised things like bracing and body shape. A lot of the guitars in the 60s, I mean, this is fairly recent, you know, we're not talking 100 years ago here. The electronics were done in a certain way, with certain pots, certain wires, a certain look to them, and the pickups were manufactured in a certain way. And people now seem to think that's the best possible way it could still be done. And I beg to differ. Because
there's been a lot of advances in technology then. I mean, I like passive basses and that, but I do like the active sound as well. I think there's room for all these kind of variations in there. You know, I don't massively object to a guitar with a microchip preamp in the back of it, you know, or something that takes a couple of 9-volt batteries, you know. It's not what I'd go to first of all, mainly because I'm lazy and I leave guitars plugged in and the batteries go flat if you do that with an active. But
I've done that so many times.
But partially because I'm a more traditional bass player, I guess. I kind of sit in the mix kind of thing. But that's not for everyone, and there are no rules in rock and roll, thank goodness.
Yeah, absolutely not.
Yeah,
absolutely not. And you mentioned PCBs, and people start to twitch if they see a guitar that's got a PCB in it. Even though that some of the more innovative guitars from the 60s and 70s, which do have primitive PCBs and switches and preamps and active components in them, are kind of divisive, but desirable items in terms of, I suppose, antiquity. You know, people collect old technology, like our friend Mick, and they're a bit of an oddity, but no one's thought, well, why don't we do that again, but with modern components, with modern chips? Yeah. And one thing I've got on the go at the moment is a friend of mine. He's a PhD in electronic engineering and specialises in I can't even remember the title of his thesis. It's so complex, but basically computer languages. You know, he speaks all of them. So we're coming up with a proprietary PCB, which will be a feature of all my guitars. It's a modular item, which is primarily going to cut down on loose wiring flapping about the place, which
very nice
is also shielded. So we're cutting down the amount of noise, which means that you don't have to be so pernickety about the internals of the guitar. I mean, it's obviously all going to still be shielded. But the effect is it's going to cut a lot of noise out, I think, and make them for a much cleaner sound.
I mean, I'm a shielding things. You've just reminded me of when I bought my first American Fender bass there, and just obviously the first thing you do is you take it off and look at the electronics. You take the panels off and have a look. And I remember looking at how well that was wired up and all of the heat shrink and all of the shielding and everything, and then looking at one of the cheap Squiers that I had and how that was wired up inside. And I was like, that's what you pay for. That's what the money's going on, not just the woods, but the quality of the workmanship with the electronics there as well. I love interesting electronics in guitars, actually. I mean, we're not talking about sort of the, dare I mention it, the 80s synth-ax and that kind of thing, the guitars that had MIDI things in them and various different things like that. But in the late 70s, early 80s, and I can't remember the manufacturer's name, unfortunately, but I remember Chris Squire from Yes had a couple of basses that actually had effects in the bass. And I can't remember the manufacturer now, but they did this system whereby there were slots in the back and they made effects units and you could slot them in and out. You could have 2 or 3 onboard effects. And there's a Yes track called Tempest Fuji, if anyone wants to check it out. And he has this flanger, and the flanger's actually built into the bass. So it's got this real kind of presence, trebly kind of sound. I mean, would that be an area you'd be interested in going in, maybe putting onboard effects into a guitar?
Again, that's something that's really down to the individual. Some people, they want all the controls they can have on their guitar. You know, you can have something like the Red Special, which has got controls for every for all of the 3 pickups, and each one of them's got an on-off switch and combinations and that kind of thing.
Yeah. Coil tap and all sorts.
Exactly. Some people find that to be over-engineered. They just want one volume knob.
Yeah.
You know, they don't even want a tone knob. Oh, I can do that. Yeah, I can do that on my amp, or I can do it with my foot pedals. That's fine. That's fine. And as long as no one's going to be...
That always surprises me when people say that, because I always think, yes, you can do tone controls on your amp, but the tone control on your amp is different to the tone control on a guitar, I think. And like, I'll always get my tone set right on my amp, but then I'll always back the treble off on the bass to give it the warmth. I think the tone controls are doing a different thing, personally.
No, well, you're not wrong. Yeah, because you can alter how the tone control works on a guitar by altering the size of the cap for a start.
Yeah.
Which means if you really want to, you could have a 33 nanofarad on your neck and a 44 on the bridge if you are so inclined. You know, this is the benefit of custom guitars again. Just throwing plugs in there.
Yeah.
And
so presumably that is controlling, as it were, the cue. It's controlling how much of the bandwidth of the treble it's pulling out. So whether it's just pulling out a specific frequency or whether it's pulling out quite a wide range of frequencies.
Yeah, exactly. If you get into it and you're looking at the sine wave, you're kind of clipping the sine wave where you want it to be. For controls on a guitar, ideally for me, I want a volume control for each pickup, whether that's on a switch or on a knob, and I want to be able to control the tone of each pickup. Just for versatility. And like you say, there's a lot of controls you can do once you pass the guitar.
Yeah.
And some people like it that way. Yeah. And that's absolutely fine.
That's really interesting, because my approach as a bassist is the exact opposite. My favourite bass is a P bass, I think. I like a jazz bass. I like a P bass. I like one volume and one tone control. I think I'd quite like, no one makes one, but I'd quite like a P bass with one volume and one tone, but maybe alternative pickups, so you can have a pickup selector but just one master volume kind of thing. But I mean, I guess that's the kind of custom thing you can do, is you can do all these different wire ups and different configurations.
But also, if you've got the person who's built it for you, you take that guitar away for 3 months and you go, oh, actually this isn't working for me, you can bring it in and I'll rewire it, you know. And getting back to the kind of how much electronics do you want to stuff into a guitar before it becomes a synth. I mean, I don't think there's any particular line, because you can...
He says ashamedly putting the dust cover on his bass synth pedal.
You can cover it up, get it out of my sight. No, I'm joking. There's a slight tangent here on the attitude of people in any hobby, in anything you go down a rabbit hole with. There's always going to be elitists and people who think that their opinion is, their subjective opinion is objective truth, and it's hard for anyone entering that community to kind of get over that. Whereas my mind is wide open, and people can do what they want as long as it's what they prefer and not what they've been told to like by someone else. So if you want to have every onboard effect you can think of, if you want a small PC humming away in the back of your guitar that makes it sound like a piano, whatever, you know, that's fine by me. If you want to just have a synth, if you want to have a MIDI guitar, then buy a MIDI guitar. I'm not sure where you'd put the line between a guitar doing synth stuff and a dedicated MIDI instrument that looks like a guitar.
Yeah.
But that's not for me to say.
Yeah, I mean, things like the Syntax were like that, but Roland do a very good system now where it's just an external pickup that you glue onto the guitar, and it plugs into a sort of interface and stuff. They're interesting, but I guess they're useful for songwriting and stuff if you can't play keyboards and you really want to use a guitar. I've heard a few applications. I think there's a Genesis record where Mike Rutherford uses synth guitar on one, but I think they're quite limited in their approach. But never say never as technology grows and moves on. Who knows?
Yeah, something that's becoming quite popular is having piezo pickups. In the
bridge
bridges and saddles of electric guitars.
Yeah, piezos are really interesting. I've heard some of the Yamaha 6-string, 5-string, and 6-string basses. People like John Patitucci and Nathan East have those in the bridge, and it makes these massive, expensive electric basses sound a bit like an acoustic.
Yeah, they're increasing in popularity a lot at the minute. I think there's a bit of a resurgence. A couple of companies have re-engineered the piezo pickups that are going under the bridges, and I'm making an assumption that they work well on basses because the way the strings, the heaviness creates a really nice signal for them. Obviously, they've been around forever. Every electroacoustic has a piezo pickup, at least one in. They have microphones as well now, the posher ones. But yeah, you can put them on just about any electric guitar now, and with a decent pedal set and some presets and a bit of post, you can make an electric sound very much like a very nice acoustic, much like you can make an acoustic guitar sound exactly like any guitar you want with all the effects
with enough distortion and stuff. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, how close to an acoustic do they sound, would you say? Will they? There's no danger of ever replacing an acoustic, I guess.
Oh, not even close. No, I suppose it's a bit of a novelty. There's no reason you would have an electric on stage why to sound like an acoustic.
Other than on the record, you'd played two different guitars, and you hadn't got time to change from an acoustic to.
I don't know why you do that if you were a professional performer and not have a roadie come out and switch your guitar for you.
Yeah.
But it's still fun, and why not? You know.
Yeah.
I mean, I like because although the action on my Strat is nice and low and very quick, the way Strats are, you know, for solo work and that kind of thing. I do love the way my acoustic feels. The strings feel tighter. The action takes a little bit more work.
Yeah,
but it's satisfying. I like the shape of the body, so sometimes I crank up the gain on that, you know, and I smash out some really heavyweight blues in E minor and that kind of thing, and it sounds fantastic. But why would I do that live if I was a performer? It's great for my little home studio.
Yeah, I've heard some interesting sounds. I mean, I think just to Nathan East working with Clapton on the start of Bad Love on the Journeyman album, he's using a piezo pickup on that, and I think on Tears in Heaven as well. It sounds like it's a double bass, and when they did the Unplugged set, it was a double bass, but in reality on the record it's actually an electric with a piezo one, because it's just easier in the studio, isn't it, just to plug straight into the desk than having to mic up a double bass.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, technology is at the point now where you could turn this conversation into something that sounds like someone playing a bass.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
but there's a lot to be said for a natural sound that's produced, at the point of origin sound, if you will.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, I will be putting piezos in my guitars in the future. I will experiment with it. Maybe one for myself first, or maybe I'll butcher my Strat again and stick one in that. It's each to their own, but you'll never replicate the sound of a true acoustic. Simply because they are, I mean, scientifically speaking, acoustic guitars are fascinating.
So, I mean, how do you feel about the argument that the quality of wood affects the sound of an electric guitar?
Yeah, okay, you can put a piezo in a Strat and make it sound like an acoustic guitar, like underscored italic in bold. Yeah. But acoustics sound like acoustics because of the way they behave, the way they produce the sound.
They're a resonant chamber, aren't they? Effectively, the sound moves around inside the body of the instrument, which is nothing like an electric, I guess.
Yeah, the soundboard of an acoustic guitar is in essence, like a speaker cone.
Right.
The strings produce vibrations. They transfer through the saddle or bridge into the soundboard, and the whole thing moves. And you have the sound hole, which acts like an air pump, and you have the back in particular moving in sympathy, sometimes in sync and sometimes in opposition to the soundboard, depending on which string you pluck, depending on where you're tapping on the body, and depending on what wood it's made out of and how thick it is and where your sound hole is and how big it is and where your bridge is positioned and how it's braced and what material the bracing is made out of and what material the neck is made out of. And it all matters. In an electric, you're producing sound by inducing a current using electromagnetic fields. Yeah. And as long as you've got a nice rigid neck, that means that those strings are vibrating in a nice, smooth and uninterrupted way, then it's all about the pickups and the electronics.
So the difference between like a high-end, let's say a very expensive Gibson or a Strat or something like that, and a cheap economy budget model, obviously the electronics can be better in the more expensive model, but say if we had two identical guitars electronically, and one was a budget guitar and one was a top-end guitar, is the difference mainly then about the feel of the woods and the feel of the guitar rather than actually having any effect on the tone?
Assuming we've got the same player playing both guitars. Yeah. And for argument's sake, it's the same set of strings.
Okay.
But the electronics inside are different. Then the higher quality electronics are going to produce a better sound. I mean, again, with modern technology, you can take a really shitty Mexican-made guitar with 10 quid pickups in it, and you can do a lot of engineering to the sound to make it sound nice, but that's a lot of effort when you could start off with a nice instrument in the first place. Yeah.
But the wood isn't going to have that much influence.
No, I was going to say, if you take all the fancy electronics from one and put it into the other, there's going to be minimal change. There's one guy on YouTube, he did a fantastic experiment. I don't know his name because he's not introduced himself on his own channel yet. He actually removes all the wood. He screws his bridge into a workbench, runs the strings to a set of tuners which are held in place by a bit of wood with two motorcycle engines on it, and then places the pickup near the strings, and he compares that sound to the guitar fully assembled, and there's no difference, because you can't interrupt an electromagnetic too much coffee, it's good stuff. An electromagnetic signal is not going to be affected by the wood that's nearby.
So I mean, obviously you're a luthier building. I mean, where do you get your woods from? Is it sustainable materials nowadays?
My first couple of builds, I was kind of suckered into, I need to get nice quality wood to make a nice guitar. Yeah. Although by the time it had arrived, I realised that I was spending a lot of money on a large solid piece of walnut to make a nice looking, but essentially heavy guitar.
Heavy, very heavy.
solid walnut with a kind of a blues humbucker setup in it, and the 5-string short scale bass was made out of maple, purple heartwood, Wenge, maple and purple heartwood veneers to create the layered laminated neck through, and a very expensive piece of olive wood on top.
I thought that was olive wood when I saw it, actually, because I have it sounds a weird thing to say, but I have a chopping board that looks very similar.
You will see them, and I cannot walk through a TK Maxx without going and looking at all the chopping boards and thinking, I wonder how many of those I can
sandwich a few of those together and to get the thickness that I need. Yeah.
That's right. I mean, some of them come quite thick anyway. But yeah, I look at every piece of wood I walk past now. I'm like, this wardrobe, that's
not wood.
Can I add strings to that?
Yeah.
But I'm very interested in...
Careful, there's a line in there.
Reclaim. I'm very interested in using reclaimed and sustainable sources, because there's a guy in America who runs New Perspectives Music. People know the name Tim Sway more than they do New Perspectives Music. And I love what he does. He builds guitars out of pallet wood, out of hollow core doors, wardrobes, and all sorts. He's even started making his own pickups. Fascinating. Out of scrap wood, essentially. And not everyone likes that, because there is an attitude towards high quality wood being a high quality instrument and that kind of thing. But it's certainly influenced me, and where I live in Wales and the community's green sort of eco attitude in general has influenced me. So the next guitars I'm producing, I've got some elm, ash, and yew, and that's all from casualty trees, which have come down in storms a couple of years ago.
Oh, great.
I've got some bits and pieces. There's a piece of mahogany from a church organ. I've got a walnut wardrobe door, which is coming, which is 10 mil thick, so that's perfect for a few fretboards or even a top. I've got some pallet wood arrived as well.
Wow.
And a load of lumps of mahogany. I think it looks like a really big, heavy skirting board, but it's like 2 inches thick. And this is going to get burnt otherwise.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm gonna turn it into musical instruments. I'm gonna give it a voice and hopefully create some joy.
I mean, normally when you see someone recycling or that kind of rejuvenating of something, normally it's worth slightly less than the original thing. But you're actually going to probably, that wardrobe will be worth more as a guitar, I would have thought.
Yeah, well, I hope so. I also came up with the idea of kind of regenerating or replacing what I'm taking by using wood in my guitars. So I've kind of doubled down now, because I'm going to be planting a tree. For every guitar that I build, I'm going to be planting a tree. I've got a small piece of land in Wales, and there's also a rewilding project going on. So I'm going to be supplying trees there. I've got one spruce which has been planted for the 5-string bass.
Brilliant.
And in future, my customers will get.
Did you call it Jack? Jack Spruce. It's
No,
a bass
damn,
player
I
joke
should've.
for anyone who's a bass player.
I should have.
That joke was for you.
It doesn't have a name, but now it does. Thank you. Yeah. And so aside from the whole package I provide,
That's fabulous.
They're going to get a little picture and a little certificate saying thank you.
That's fabulous.
Here's your tree.
That.
Give it a name.
We were talking earlier about the pact and the cards that come with the coffee, and what a nice touch that is. That to me, Chris, that is a really nice thing, that you get a bass guitar, but you also get a picture of the tree that's been grown to replace the one that was used on that. I love that. I really like that. I think that's fantastic. What a great idea. So I'm going to encourage people to plant trees, so they need to order guitars from you.
Absolutely.
And we'll plant more trees and save the planet from carbon dioxide.
Yeah. The tree planting thing actually came from being in parts of West Africa where deforestation is a huge industry. Fortunately, a couple of the countries I visited, they're putting caps on the amount that they cut down and export now.
Yeah.
But you've seen these incredible like coca-colas and other trees I've never heard of. They must be, some of them pushing 700 to 1,000 years old.
Wow.
4 or 5 meters wide, dwarfing the lorries they're being carried
Fantastic.
on. And some of them grow up to like 200 meters tall. And that made me think, like, who's buying this wood and why? And then I got home and I'm looking at this piece of walnut that I bought, and I didn't know where it had come from. I didn't know what plane or boat it had come to me on. So yeah, that kind of cemented my
Fabulous.
my eco aspirations for this.
That's fantastic. And dare I ask the dreaded awful question, how long does it take to make, say, an average 4 or 5 string guitar or bass?
It's going to vary. The 5-string bass took me in hours, somewhere between 75 and 100 hours.
Yeah.
But granted, I was going fairly slow because I was doing a couple of techniques which I've not done with wood before.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of hand carving to do on some features of the neck.
Nice.
I magnetised the truss rod cover and the rear cover. And I also had to do.
That's very useful.
I love using the little magnets because it removes the use of screws, and screws going in and out of wood just deteriorates over time.
You're stripping the thread every time you put the screw in.
Exactly. I looked at inserts and I went with magnets in the end. But I also
Not
spend,
to mention taking the heads off the screws. If you've not got, because you've never got the perfect size screwdriver.
No. You can never trust the screws. Which, if you go on Amazon, and you buy screws for guitars. They're made out of cheese. They're horrible things.
Oh, they're
fall
horrible.
apart.
I've had a few of those. Strip the heads. Yeah.
So, like the bridge on that bass is secured with 5 just fairly standard wood screws that I polished up to look a bit nicer because they're decent quality. But in terms of how long a build takes, an example of like a bump in the road was the pickups, the Lola pickups I installed. They've got a jazz bass style shape, and I didn't have a template for that. And I don't like CNCing directly. I like to do it by hand. So I had to. So what I did was CNC the template, which I had to draw, which meant getting the CAD program out. And I'm au fait with Fusion 360. I also use Easel from Inventables. It's very quick and easy and very accessible for 2D stuff. After a couple of hours, I couldn't work out why I was machining this thing and it was fitting in perfectly, and then I was kind of checking it out, having another look, and it wasn't fitting. I was like, what the hell? So I adjusted the measurements, cut it again. I ended up with like 6 or 7 iterations before I realised that the neck and bridge are very slightly smaller measurements from the other one. 2 different sizes. So long story short, it basically took me 8 hours just to make the template for that. But that's something that I won't have to do in the future.
Yeah, it's a learning curve, isn't it?
Exactly. So that's 8 hours you can knock off the time straight away.
Brilliant.
You can knock off the extra little bit of time it took to plan the headstock. For instance, because I'd not done a 5-string bass before, I'd not worked with tuners of that particular diameter before. I had to order a new drill bit for the size. All these little details kind of come together.
It's that thing, isn't it? That constant accumulation of tools and stuff. But once you've got the tool, you've got the tool kind of thing, and you'll never need to order it again. But it's like setting up this studio, when you're first buying stuff, you're looking at how much it's costing you. But then once you get it, the chances of a microphone failing are very, very slim. Once you've bought a microphone, you've invested in it, that's probably going to last you 20 years, 30 years, that microphone kind of thing. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of CAD files, once I've done, they're there forever. If I ever use Lola pickups again, I can just click on that file, or I can just pull the template out. Yeah. And it's not. I also have a headstock template now, which I like so much. Someone said that looks a bit like a nose of an X-wing. So I'm keeping that.
Nice.
That's going to be like a signature thing on my guitars now.
Yeah, very nice indeed. Hi there. Chris here, host of A Couple of Drips. If you'd like to help support the production of the show and buy the coffee we try, then you can either buy us a one-off thank you coffee at ko-fi.com, that's ko-fi.com, or if you'd like to become a member and give us regular support, then click on the support button in your player. Cheers for listening, and on with the show. I've nearly drunk all of this.
Same.
How many gallons is that we've got through? I don't know.
A few litres, metric, please.
It's quite a lot. Metric. So, you've travelled quite extensively. Where's the best coffee you've had? Here, obviously. No, sorry.
In this room.
Right now.
Yeah. From where's that card? Packed Coffee. Dorado.
We're going to be getting a sponsorship at this rate.
Yeah. So, I'll have to say the Vietnam. Yeah, I do pay attention to that stuff because I'm a massive foodie and I love to cook.
Oh, yeah, me too.
So one of the highlights of the traveling I did was trying all the local cuisine and getting out there.
Beautiful.
And it was the Civic coffee. You had
wow,
Civic Poo coffee in Vietnam. Yeah. I got to get a little taster of that. It was very nice.
Fantastic. I saw that when I was in LA, but they would roast it to order and close the store and do a tasting, but it was $100 a cup, which was a little bit above my budget at the time. So
yeah, I got a small espresso,
like a thimble.
Yeah. It was very kind. I was being hosted by the local engineers, and they were keen
that
to
was
treat
really
me.
nice. Yeah, I would love to try that. I have to say,
it tasted. In Austin Powers where he drinks the poo and he goes, "It's a bit nutty," and. Yeah. I have to say, it tasted a bit nutty. Yeah.
Wow.
Civic shit coffee.
Interesting. If you're not aware of that, anyone listening, I will put a link in the description to the wiki page for that coffee, because if you don't know about it, it really is worth reading about.
Yes, and the images will not leave you,
No.
especially when you're drinking it,
Yeah,
when you put it into
definitely.
your lips.
Of course, it's pasteurised, of course, because it's had boiling water poured over it. So, yeah. So your travel, what was your former job, Chris? How come you've seen much of the world, and where have you been?
Well, the travelling split between two jobs. So I'm an engineer. I apprenticed into the army in my late teens as an armourer, weapons engineer. And so I got to see various parts of the Middle East, of course, Canada, Poland. I lived in Germany for 4 or 5 years.
I love Poland. I just dropped that in there.
Yeah. I love
Gdansk, amazing city.
I've not been to that part. I've only been to the middle of nowhere.
Oh, you need to go. You need to go. It's amazing.
Yeah, I've met some Polish people.
People are amazing as well.
Yeah. We went to there's a training area called Drawsko Pomorski, or it's in the region of Drawsko Pomorski. And I've met a few Polish people since then. I explain this place to them. They just give me this blank look, like, what? Where? Yeah. It's like if you walk up to every average Englishman and you say, point to North Allerton on a map, they're like, where?
Where?
Yeah. But and then after I came out of the army, I floated around in a couple of engineering jobs, and I ended up working for a company whose headquarters are in Stoke, actually, as an X-ray systems engineer.
Wow.
Yeah, large scale cargo X-ray. You're talking whole lorries, containers, trains, planes, automobiles.
That's a big X-ray unit.
Yeah, they're big old things. The biggest
Big
one goes up
emitters.
to put it in perspective, your medical X-rays are sort of in the kilo electron volt range. They're quite light, low powered, and then the truck ones are sort of 6 MeV, and they go up to about 15 MeV, which they use to scan solid rocket boosters.
Wow.
To find any defects, and that kind of thing. And
that's impressive. Yeah. You don't want to be stood in front of that.
No, not the 15 MeV. No. 6 MeV, you're fine. You've got a good solid couple of minutes to kind of stand in front of that beam before you write yourself off. But you've got about 2 seconds in a 15 MeV beam before you are done for.
Oh.
So yes, obviously safety was a big part of it. But yeah, these systems are all over the world, on borders. So in total, who's counting? I've been to who's counting? I'm not bragging. Been to 32 countries.
Fantastic.
Including various parts of Turkey, Cameroon, Togo, Vietnam, mentioned, all over Europe, the States as well, because I did a course in Vegas and that kind of thing.
Fantastic.
I don't remember anything about the course because I spent a week in Vegas. I
Well,
remember the week in Vegas. I don't remember any of the education.
What happens in Vegas?
Yeah, a lot happened.
Talking of world tours and radiation, there's a link. I read last night that the Russians have occupied Chernobyl. I don't know what they want to do with it. What would you do with a...
I mean, you can't do anything worse.
No.
What are they going to do? Nuke it again?
Well,
It's I think it's just a territory thing, isn't it? Because they're moving into all parts of Ukraine, from the south through the Crimea, through the north, and of course through the 2 contested regions.
Yeah.
So good luck to the Ukraine. I mean, it's shocking and quite disappointing actually to be seeing symmetrical, internecine modern warfare between 2 nation states this day and age.
Yeah, absolutely.
The images coming through on Facebook and Instagram are reminiscent of some of the World War II stuff we've seen.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's crazy. It's
crazy. Horrendous. We are on social media, so I thought it would be quite a nice idea at some point if you wanted to ask any questions to any upcoming guests or just to me about coffee or anything generally. Do drop us an email. Email is coupleofdrips@gmail.com. You can also follow us on Twitter @coupleofdrips. And just get involved with the show if you're listening. And if you're not listening, who am I talking to? But just get involved with the show.
I'm listening.
And get involved with the show and send us some questions and some feedback and stuff. And if there's any ideas for features and things you'd like to hear, that'd be great. Don't forget, of course, we've got coming up soon recording it next week, actually, the first of 2 mental health specials. That may expand. There may be more episodes of that. If it's popular, we'll see what themes and issues come out of those. The first show is people who've used mental health services. The second show is mental health professionals. But there's a lot of people, I think yourself, Chris, included as well, said you'd be interested in talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. Mental health, not just men's mental health, but in general, is something that's really important to me. I've been through the mill myself through various reasons, surprisingly not military related. But yeah, it's such a crucial issue that needs discussing.
It is, and I think with lockdown and everything over the last couple of years, I think a lot of it's come to head. I mean, it's nice to hear it talked about a lot more in the press now, because it was for years kind of swept under the carpet and almost seen as kind of weakness, and you only have to suffer from mental health problems yourself, as I have as well, and that it's not minor, it's not something to be swept under the carpet, and it's certainly not weakness.
No,
it's something everyone suffers from in their life in one point.
Yeah, absolutely. There's actually statistic that says that there's 1 in 4 people will suffer some sort of mental health problem, whether it be short or long lived, in their life. That's one in 4. Imagine walking through a busy, crowded shopping centre and think about the people around you.
Yeah, definitely. So, other interests, Chris. What do you do when you're not carving bits of wood and travelling the world?
I sit around thinking about how on earth am I going to fit in all these hobbies ever. And I get free time stress and never do anything.
I mean, how did we meet?
Well, gaming is a passion of mine. I've been a gamer since I was born 84, so my first console was a NES, and I've been gaming ever since. Actually, no, take that back. My first console was a Commodore VIC-20 on a black and white TV.
Well, I mean, my first computer was a Texas Instruments TI-99 4A.
Never heard of it, old man.
It's I know, 1981, and at the time I remember wanting a little portable Pac-Man game, and my dad said, well, if you had a computer, you could play loads of different games on it. And I didn't really know much about computers at the time, but it was an interesting, unusual computer, because it was a normal computer, you could program it and you could load it by tapes, but it also had a cartridge slot like the Atari.
Yeah, the Commodore did.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah. So you could actually buy really good games that didn't take half an hour to load.
They were generally smaller games, but they loaded quickly, which was good. Yeah. My parents swear that they had an Intellivision before I was born.
Wow.
I hate them for not keeping it and passing it on to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, Commodore VIC-20 on a 14-inch black and white colour TV.
Nice.
I mean, I'm only 38, and that's how quickly technology's moved on.
Yeah.
So then it was a Commodore 64, like you say, with the tape deck and the cartridges in the back. And then I, through our mutual friend Stu from your feature length special.
Yes.
He said, "Do you online game, Chris?" I said, "No, I don't go anyway near that toxic shit. Online gaming is for
absolutely.
losers, I played World of Tanks.
If I'd wanted to be called a by a 12-year-old, then
yeah, it's fantastic. We'll play World of Tanks, and you'll get called a by 30 different people in 5 minutes, all of them to the age of 12, and in many, many different colourful languages. I mean, it's infamous for being a really, really toxic community. But it turns out, it's all about who your friends are and who you play with. And I play with you guys. We call ourselves the Jedis. And you and Jam and Christo and I'm acquainted with before.
Yeah. And there's Mick who'll be on the Mental Health podcast as well.
Yeah, of course.
Jamie who has been on 2 previous podcasts because he's greedy, and Lee Smith, who will be on the Mental Health podcast as well. So
fantastic. Yeah, it'll be a Jedi reunion.
But so we started off playing. The Jedi started off playing Battlefront, the Star Wars game, and then we graduated to Battlefront 2 came out and killed the franchise, and then we graduated on to Battlefield 1, and then Battlefield
5
was it?
Yeah, and now 2042.
And now 2042. So, and we met somewhere in between through Stu, as you say, who's the very naughty boy who was on our Christmas special.
yeah. Who's never on? Stu, get yourself online.
Yeah,
I
Stu
don't care if you
spends
don't like the game.
he won't be listening to this because he doesn't listen to podcasts, even though he's been on one, and he keeps going on video, and I keep sending him podcasts to listen to, and he goes, yeah, I'll listen to it, and he doesn't listen. But he says he'll listen to one, and if I tell him he's mentioned in this one, he might listen. But Stu spends a lot of time trying to persuade people to play new games that they haven't played before, but he doesn't actually spend much time playing the games he's already got with us.
I spend less time gaming than I'd like to because I try to manage the time between all my different hobbies. It's because I like water sports, skiing. There's the lake near us.
Nice.
We go paddle boarding. My partner does yoga, and I join her a couple of times a week.
Fantastic.
As a student.
Yeah.
I'm a huge Warhammer nerd. Warhammer 40k, have been since I was about 10 years old.
Oh, interesting. I don't know much about it at all, other than the fact that when I was a kid, my family owned a model shop in Warsaw, and one of the things they did was sell Warhammer figures. So tell me a little bit about Warhammer. I know very, very little.
Well,
other than people spend a lot of time painting the figures.
Yes, yeah. I mean, I don't actually play the game. I've always been about the lore and painting the models. And one aspect of Man's Health we touched on is painting the models is something that's very therapeutic.
Yeah, sure.
And a little bit nostalgic for me as well.
Mm.
It's a dystopian, far future sci-fi that was created as sort of an alternative to fantasy tabletop games. So it was Warhammer was riffing on Lord of the Rings and Dungeons and Dragons, and Warhammer 40k riffs on that, but in space with with lots and lots of different aspects from 50s sci-fi that they've blatantly ripped off. So you've got Dune, Foundation trilogy. You've got
Forbidden Planet.
Yeah, there's a bit of Forbidden Planet in there. Starship Troopers, the novel, not the hilarious film. All that kind of thing, and it's all it's into this kind of cautionary, super fascist human empire, a little bit like the Terran Empire from the alternative timelines in Star Trek, but extremely gothic. All the weapons are horrendous and don't just kill you; they maim you and torture you.
Of course.
All the aliens are these eldritch horrors. Yeah. There's gods, fire, brimstone, retribution, and fanatic faith. And it's if you haven't heard of it before, I'm sure Henry Cavill has brought it to your attention in recent times, as he's now the Messiah, the world's most famous nerd, and good on him for being shameless about it.
Brilliant. Yeah, I always felt like I played Dungeons and Dragons and that a bit at school and stuff, and we're kind of into that. But I guess with things like Stranger Things and that, there's been a real renaissance for that sort of tabletop gaming, and I guess through lockdown as well. You know, with people wanting things to do when they're stuck at home. You know.
Yeah, it's I know that kind of nerd culture got a bit of a reboot, a bit of a kickstart, an uplift, whatever you want to call it, with Iron Man and the whole advent of comic books being cool again. You know, it's a new golden age for this kind of thing.
Yeah, the Marvel franchise and all the films.
And I'm so happy to see people coming out of their shell to be openly nerdy. And there's a whole new wave of cafes and shops opening up, where people go and play tabletop games on their days off, and they engage in narrative, and they're open to new ideas, and it's a lovely community generally to be a part of.
Yeah, brilliant, love it. So, are you also? I mean, we're talking about your immense creativity with the guitar building, but you're a bit of a painter as well, aren't you?
Yeah, well, I started off on the models, as I say, and a long time ago, someone said to me, why don't you paint on a flat surface? Blasphemy! No, no, little plastic soldiers are my bit. But I started. And
I think they were lead originally, weren't they? All
yeah,
the
they
figures
were,
originally-
they were literally lead. They're literally poisonous. And so, lead models, lead paint, great. But I started doing flat canvas stuff. It's something different every time. I don't rush. I don't sell them. It's just for my own enjoyment.
Therapy again, I guess.
Yes, absolutely. And I think it's a new level of patience that I've found in recent times that enables me to enjoy all these hobbies at my own pace without any pressure. And without having to post every paint stroke, every brush stroke on social media like some people
It's
do.
very zen, and it fits in nicely with the yoga and that as well. I think that we could do this as a mental health special now. It's one of those things that we hear so much about dieting and healthy eating and stuff, and so little talk about what to do to a healthy mind. And it's all very well having a cure if you have a breakdown or you have some kind of mental health problem, but how about a bit of prevention in that area? Things that you can do that kind of prevent those problems before they happen. Or recognizing the warning signs before it gets too desperate.
Yeah, absolutely. I think people find these things post trauma. And it becomes a prevention for a relapse, because you never know when life's gonna
absolutely
bring you down, and you can't spend your whole life preparing for some sort of life-changing emotional or physical trauma. Yeah, but certainly aftercare is really important.
Yeah, definitely. I'm drawn to your T-shirt actually. Talking of these kind of things, we'll do a selfie to go on the description for the episode as well. But you're wearing a T-shirt that says "Weaponized Autism." Do you want to explain that a little bit?
That's right. It is. It's a black T-shirt with a pink and chrome 80s retro style print on it that says "Weaponized."
Slightly cyberpunk, if I may say that.
Yeah, this is the mother of all inside jokes for me, because it doesn't make sense to anyone else. But when I saw it, I had to have it because in my early 30s, I started to become suspicious about the differences between me and other people. And he was actually Jim Jeffries, the comedian.
Fantastic!
Talking about finding out in his 30s that he's actually had autism and going, fuck me, that makes sense. Yeah. And I had that moment. I looked into it, and I went to the doctors and I said, I'd like to be tested. And they said, well, we don't really do that anymore because we're so aware of it. There's no kind of minimum or maximum metric for this stuff anymore.
Everyone's on a sliding scale.
Exactly. So they pointed me towards charities. So there's a few charities out there you can pay to take a very long and involved questionnaire that you have to be entirely honest on, and then they give you a kind of like a best guess diagnosis, and you can take this form and you can discuss it with a psychologist if you wish to, which I did. And it turns out I'm at the Asperger's end of the spectrum. Yeah. And I wish I could say it was a shock, but it was more of an epiphany. It was kind of a
sure.
Oh,
that explains this.
It all makes so much sense now. So I went back and I relived every conversation I'd ever had, every little thing that had gone wrong. Particularly every conversation that was hurtful towards me. I kind of realized that the perspective I had and this perspective they had differed so much because of this thing. But
having that, for want of a better word, label, I guess weaponizes it, because it puts so much power into understanding everything that you've gone through and everything that's happened. And
yeah, absolutely. It lets
you own it, I guess.
It was a kind of a meme for a while, like this is sheer weaponized autism. When people were making certain comments on Facebook and stuff like that, and there's another group of people saying you're not allowed to say anything about autism because it's really unfair and this kind of thing. And I'm like, well, turns out I am autistic and I do have a really shitty, dark sense of humor. Yeah. And I've been involved in weapons and weaponry like all my life as a hobby and as a career. And then I saw this T-shirt, and obviously it was made for me,
made for you.
And I think Kyle Hill is a science communicator on YouTube. He used to work for Nerdist, and now he's got his own channel. And he's a really great, interesting guy who's also on the spectrum. And he discovered this in adulthood as well. And I found his comments on it very supportive. And he said, autism is my superpower. And that really resonated with me. So that's also weaponized autism.
But I thought your superpower was rock climbing.
nice segue. Yeah, like that. No, certainly not. I'm pretty bad at rock climbing. If there's any climbers listening, I struggle with sort of 6Cs, 6Bs. But yeah, it's one of the many things I like to do, and it's my partner that got me into that. So it's something we do together, like the paddleboarding and yoga, which is very nice to have these things that we do together.
Yeah, good to have outdoor and physical activities. I could do with a few of those myself. Definitely. That would be quite good. It's time for that bit of the show.
What bit of the show?
Where I play the worst ident in the world.
Oh, okay. I thought we were going to get naked.
Later.
Climb to fame, climb to fame. It's your chance to drop a name. Trying to outdo each other's kind of lame. One-upmanship is the only aim. Climb to fame, claim to fame, claim to fame, claim to fame. Thank you very much.
I can only apologise.
Disgusting.
So, do you have a claim to fame, Chris? This is the question.
Oh, very, very, very tenuous. Aside from being on the news for about 0.3 seconds when I did the Great North Run once. I met Prince Philip when I was in the army. He came to Prince Philip Barracks in Tidworth, and he was getting the tour. And I was the chief weapons nerd at the time, I suppose.
Nice.
So
bet you found that interesting. I bet you got conversation out of that one.
Yeah. But I was super nervous. But the entourage kind of come in before, and they tell you to relax, and they kind of give you cues and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we had all the modern sort of the urgent operational requirement stuff that they brought in. So we had new things like the grenade machine gun, the GMG, the new R115 sniper rifle, and a couple of other bits and pieces like the modernized rifle, and talked him through that. And he was very chatty. It was really good dialogue back and forth. And we got to the last one, and he was quite fascinated with the grenade machine gun, as was everyone else, because it's 360 grenades a minute makes people kind of go, what? But then he says, "Oh, it reminds me of the puckle gun and this, that, and the other." And he kind of got onto older weapons, and he was educating me, and he started talking about Hiram Maxim, and he took time out of his day. People are trying to like shove him on the way, but he was like, "No, fuck off! I'm having a conversation. I'll do what I want. Bugger your itinerary." And he asked me about Hiram Maxim, and I said, I don't actually know a lot about his life. And he says, well, I spend most of my time reading, and he spent 5 minutes telling me about all these books that he's read, because that's what he likes to do. He was telling me this particular thing about Hiram Maxim, where he's famous for inventing the Maxim machine gun, but he did a lot of other things, like invent a steam-powered aircraft, which was never constructed.
No way.
Yeah, that patent didn't take off, if you will. And yeah, it's just really fun. There was no gaffes from him, but that's probably because the entourage came in before he arrived and swapped all the non-white people for white people and all the non-straight people for straight people. They did miss one lesbian, although you can see
it's incredible, isn't it? Unbelievable.
Yeah. It's obviously he's got a bit of a reputation, but it was just, I think it was a really rewarding conversation to have on a grounded level with someone like that. It was quite nice.
Yeah. Oh, that's nice. That's nice to actually talk about yourself. Yeah, I've told this story before, but the conversation I had with Brian May was about car parking charges. And it's like, because the last thing they want to talk about is, what's it like being a rock star? Oh, really?
Yeah.
Any others? Any other fantastic people you've met?
Well, Prince Harry walked into the Count Bastion cookhouse one time, and this was about the time that he'd been in the papers for being naked on a balcony with some ladies, I think.
Oh.
And there was a bit of hubbub around the cookhouse, like everyone's going, "Hey, look, it's Prince Harry, Prince Harry." Like all very mature for a bunch of roughy toughy soldiers on an operation. Like,
wasn't the time he was dressed as a Nazi? Then that was a different incident.
No. Then this was him being naked on a balcony, and I think he was. I'm not sure if he'd moved away from the scimitars onto being a weapons officer in an Apache. But anyway,
I saw him fly. Absolutely insane. Did some insane stunts in that helicopter.
Yeah, he was. I don't think he was the pilot. I think his brother William was a pilot, but I think he was the weapons officer. So
quite possibly, yes.
So he was riding.
Could have got that.
He was
wrong.
the gunner riding front seat, but that's still pretty cool. Like dream job there. Anyway,
some ginger well-paid person. I don't know.
Yeah. He was just scraping his plate. He was leaving the cookhouse, and the place had gone pretty quiet since he walked in. This one voice just came out of the back of the room, like, "Get your cock out, hurry!" and the whole place erupted in laughter. His face goes bright red. You know he's ginger, so he goes around like a Belisha beacon, and he pulls up a chair and he stands up, and I think he's looking around to see who shouted it. That was
brilliant.
It was like there was this tension in the room, and it was just gone.
Yeah. I can't think of a better way to dissolve the tension there. Well, Chris, it's been an absolute pleasure having you here, even with the desk crashing halfway through the show. So no one will know about that because my editing is immaculate. So, but it's been a pleasure to have you here, Chris. It's been really interesting. I hope you'll come back at some point and do another one, and maybe we'll get, if the mental health podcast the subsidiary, is that the word? Mental health podcast takes up, we may get you on a group episode as well, because that'd be really interesting to talk about. Maybe we could do an autism special, because I have a few associates who are at various different places upon the sliding scale, as it were. So
I'd love to meet them.
That would be actually a really interesting. I can organise that. So maybe we'll do that as a special. That might be interesting in the future. It's been a delight. I hope you've had a nice time here.
It's been a real treat. It's been a really nice experience.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Those of you who are listening, if you want to get in touch with Chris, all his social media will be on the episode description, and I'll put links to some of his pictures up and links to him. And if you would like a custom built guitar, I will let him know how you can get in touch. If you'd like to get in touch with us, do drop us an email at coupleofdrips@gmail.com. And don't forget to follow us on Twitter at coupleofdrips. That's brilliant. Thanks a lot, Chris. It's been an absolute delight. And I hope to see you again at some point.
It's been my genuine pleasure. Thank you.
Take care. Thank you. Bye-bye now. You've been listening to A Couple of Drips. The show was conceived and presented by Chris Granger and is a Cup the Mic production.